You would not survive a single year as a medieval peasant. Not because of plague, not because of war, because of breakfast. Most peasants in medieval Europe ate the same 11 things on rotation for their entire life. No variety, no choice, no escape. And food was the easy part. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the average peasant died at 35, and why some of them were begging the local lord to let them die faster. Let's start with where you'd actually sleep. A typical peasant home was one room. No walls inside, no privacy, ever. You'd sleep on straw, on the dirt floor, with your entire family in the same room. And you wouldn't sleep alone. Animals lived inside too. Pigs, chickens, sometimes a cow. Why? Because their body heat kept the hut from freezing, and because if you left them outside, someone would steal them overnight. So, you slept next to livestock, in the smell, in the noise, every single night of your life. But here's the part that should really worry you. That thatched roof you were sleeping under wasn't just letting in cold air. It was rotting, constantly, and it was full of insects, mice, and mold spores you breathed in every night. Respiratory disease wasn't rare. It was basically guaranteed. Now let's talk about your job, because this is where things get genuinely brutal. If you were a peasant, you didn't choose your career. You were born into it. Your father farmed, so you farmed. Your children would farm forever. There was no moving to the city, no new trade, no way out. The work itself started before sunrise. You'd work the Lord's land first, for free, before you were allowed to work your own land. This was called labor service, and it could eat up to 3 full days of your week. 3 days of unpaid work, every single week, for your entire life. Because after those 3 days, you still had to feed your own family with whatever time was left. And the Lord didn't just take your time. He taxed almost everything else too. There was a tax to use the village mill to grind your grain, a tax to use the communal oven to bake your bread, even a tax when your daughter got married. It was called a merchant. A literal fee paid to your lord for permission to marry off your own child. Imagine working sunrise to sunset, 6 days a week, and still owing money on your wedding day. But you're probably thinking, at least Sunday was a day of rest. It was. Technically, the church demanded it. But here's the twist. The church also took a cut of everything you grew. It was called a tithe, 10% of your harvest. Mandatory. So between the Lord and the church, a huge chunk of your work never even reached your own table. Now let's talk about getting sick, because this is where it gets dark fast. There were no real doctors in most villages, just a local healer with herbs and superstition. If you broke a bone, you might lose the limb to infection. If you got a simple cut, it could kill you within a week. The result, character now still and pale. There was no understanding of bacteria. No antibiotics, no sterile tools, and if the plague came through your village, there was nothing anyone could do. The Black Death alone killed an estimated 30 to 60% of Europe's entire population. Whole villages disappeared, not metaphorically, completely. Empty homes, no survivors. And if you somehow survived disease, famine was always one bad season away. A single failed harvest could mean starvation for an entire village. There was no grocery store, no emergency supply, no backup plan. If the crops failed, you ate what you could find. Bark, grass, sometimes nothing at all. The Great Famine of 1315 lasted 7 straight years across Europe. Historians believe it killed millions. Some records describe families abandoning children they could no longer feed. Let that sink in for a second. Now here's something most people never think about. Justice. If you were a peasant accused of a crime, you weren't tried by a jury of your peers. You were tried by the same lord who owned your land, taxed your harvest, and controlled your entire life. There was no appeal, no second opinion. His word was the law. Punishments were brutal by design. Public floggings, branding, mutilation for theft. Even minor offenses like poaching a rabbit on the Lord's land could cost you a hand. The goal wasn't justice, it was control through fear, and you couldn't leave. Most peasants were legally bound to the land they were born on. This was called serfdom. You belonged to the land, and the land belonged to the Lord. If you tried to run and got caught, the punishment could be severe, sometimes fatal. So picture your entire life, born on land you didn't own, working for a man you didn't choose, taxed for milling your grain, taxed for baking your bread, taxed for marrying your own child. No real medicine, no real food security, no real freedom of movement. And at the end of all that, you'd likely die around age 35. Not from old age, from exhaustion, malnutrition, infection, or famine. Compare that to today, where we complain about slow Wi-Fi and Monday mornings. Most peasants would have traded almost anything for a single, boring, safe, comfortable Tuesday. History is full of stories like this, lives that sound impossible until you realize they were completely real. If your idea of medieval life came from movies and castles, this channel exists to show you what actually happened. Subscribe to Revelox, and we'll keep unlocking the facts history never told you.